All right, let's do this thing. Like I said, happy Friday. I appreciate everybody's time today. Excited for this webinar, excited for this conversation. We're going to be talking about how land use policy shapes land acquisition and development. And so we got an amazing guest speaker on who we'll introduce in just a moment, who is in the day-to-day. It is what she does. She's at the City of Austin, at City Hall. And so excited for her to share with you. I think there's going to be a lot of value added, a lot of things that you can take and they'll impact your strategy, your business moving forward. So I'm really excited for our conversation. But we'll kick us off with some introductions and then we'll get rolling. I do want to note that just down at the bottom, you'll see a Q&A bubble. If you have any questions throughout our conversation today, just go ahead and submit those there. And we have allotted some time at the tail end of our discussion today to address any questions and spend some time on that. If for whatever reason, due to time, we don't get to the Q&A or we maybe don't get to your question specifically, we are noting those down and we'll make sure to get back to you individually after the fact. So please use that. Definitely want to be collaborative here and kind of go back and forth. But we'll kick things off here and get the ball rolling. So my name is Cody Childs, Senior Account Executive here at TraceAir. I'm out of the North Dallas area, so not too far from Alexis, specifically Frisco, Texas. And so we were talking just before this call. I don't know if I've earned the right to call myself a native Texan yet. I've only been in the area a few years. But with that, my role as an account executive is to help folks evaluate our solutions. So as they come to us with a challenge, whether it's to maybe mitigate some risk or decrease profit fade, increase profitability, or want to gain some efficiencies or maybe be more competitive and adopt some technology, they come to us and that's really my role is to take them through an evaluation process of our solution. So for the folks that I personally work with, I also serve as another layer of support and another point of contact, another resource. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our other speakers today. My co-host Mary, she is on our strategy and innovation team, our product team. A lot of you have probably already have seen Mary, maybe on a previous webinar on LinkedIn. She has become one of the faces of TraceAir, and she is, along with a couple other folks on her team, have really been leading the charge when it comes to rolling out new tools and talking to folks, getting kind of early feedback. And so, again, a lot of you have probably spoken to Mary. And so just really excited to co-host with you today, Mary. I'll go ahead and pass it over to you again to introduce yourself and our awesome guest speaker, Alexis.
Yeah, thanks, Cody. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. I've been working a lot in the land acquisition, new products that we're working on. I've been learning a lot from land acquisition folks and entitlements folks. They always tell me like, yeah, we work a lot with government, and as much as I wish TraceAir could do, make the government run faster, we are, just trying to learn more and help where we can to make the process more efficient. So I myself am a native Austinite. I was born and raised there. I went to UT Austin, so hook 'em horns. Hope we have some Longhorns here. But with me today is Alexis Garcia. She's a close childhood friend. We went to school together growing up. We were in the same neighborhood. We know so, sometimes neighborhoods are, very strong-willed in Austin and such. So, I've been really interested to learn everything she's been doing, really excited to hear, all the changes and how progressive Austin has been in their land policy. So, without further ado, I'll hand it to her to introduce herself.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Alexis Garcia. I've been a policy advisor with Mayor Watson for 2.5 years now since he got into office. And I focus all on land use and zoning. And so I've gotten to play a big role in some of these really progressive land use initiatives that has kind of garnered us national attention. I've worked on the home initiative, which is allowing 3 units on a single family lot by right, working on reducing minimum lot sizes, eliminating parking requirements, also continuing to work on subdivision and things like that. So it's been really fun. I've had a great time so far doing it, diving into land use. Of course, I've had prior experience working in the state ledge as well as working for federal. So I'm excited to see, the questions that we're going to talk about and if I can offer any perspective.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I will actually stop sharing my screen so you can see us all. We can have a nice little conversation. But kick us off, we're curious to hear a bit about your perspective inside City Hall. Looks like you're there today. So in general, what are some of the main forces driving zoning and planning updates today, whether it's growth, politics, community pressure, anything else?
Yeah, so speaking to Austin specifically, we had such a big boom in population from the pandemic in the last couple of years, and so we had a really big pressure about growth and affordability. The growth kind of led to some affordability issues. Our home prices skyrocketed, and it really became a realization that there wasn't enough stock in the market. And also, there wasn't a lot of variety of houses in the market. Austin is primarily geared towards single family. Of course, we have multifamily developments, but these single families are what you traditionally see with single family, large backyards, large houses. And we realized with the increase of growth, there was a desire for density. So that's kind of where a lot of our work came from, was attempting to create different kinds of housing, starter homes, smaller homes, while also having the larger single family homes. And then also hopefully working to address our affordability concerns. Kind of more stock in the market was kind of our goal, and it continues to be our goal. And so that's kind of where our kind of drive came from. And you're starting to see that across the nation too.
And when you say multifamily, real quick, what does that kind of reference? What type of multifamily are there?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the city of Austin, in our code, multifamily is four or more. And so, but that's by code. But when I say multifamily, I do think of the traditional 100, 200 unit um, uh, developments, even larger, Texas Donuts, if anyone's familiar with that kind of construction. And then also, what we strive and what we'd like to see more of is those 4 to 16 units, 4 to 20 developments as well. So really multifamily is 4 units or more for the city of Boston.
Gotcha. And I did mention in the past, we grew up in a neighborhood that did have some pushback. How do cities like Austin and how do you guys weigh that pressure to deliver more housing while there's also some pushback from some neighborhoods or community groups?
Yeah, we've definitely experienced a lot of pushback. And I think that's really only natural for cities with big changes to them. Austin was primarily known as a college town. It was a lot smaller prior to the pandemic, and the increase in population generated a lot of change. And that is kind of where we see a lot of the pushback and the concern about more dense neighborhoods, the desire for density, the desire for public transportation sometimes is at odds with kind of the traditional neighborhood or single family values here in Austin. But our office, we work really hard to acknowledge all sides of the coin and to incorporate them. And I have to say, we've worked closely with our neighborhood associations. We've worked closely with community engagement nonprofits and just strive to do that community engagement. And that has actually influenced the policy that we've made. We've gone lower on some zoning districts in regards to height. We've talked about where things are appropriate and where things are not appropriate. And I think that communication is really valuable in our work because it does make us have a more critical view of our land use policy, because land use is something that stays for many, many years. It's something that makes an impact. So we need to be aware of kind of all sides of the coin.
Yeah, that's really good. As you just kind of hear and talking about the kind of the relationship with neighborhoods and community groups and things. So, my follow-up question to that, and it's kind of twofold here. How much influence do the local councils have compared to like regional or state level policies? And then for the folks that are on this call, how can builders or how should builders adjust their strategies accordingly?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially in the state of Texas. We have Austin, and is in a majority conservative state where the state legislature sometimes is at odds with the city of Austin. But really happy to say that, this last legislature, there was some actual significant changes in housing and development, and that's been really exciting to see. But in terms of local government, I mean, we do have a pretty big influence when it comes to development, specifically if you're coming to us for zoning changes. Council has the final approval for all zoning changes. And then, of course, at the end of the day, land use is and can be political. And a lot of that, the politics start at the local scene because that's people's neighborhoods and it's their local representatives. So there is quite a bit of influence, as well as we have the ability to change our, zoning code or building code, et cetera, et cetera. But also the state is involved, and it's actually been really exciting to see some of the positive outcomes that have come from the Texas state legislature. They've also reduced minimum lot sizes, and they've also, encouraged more residential development in commercial zones. So, yeah, there's always going to be a relationship there, but when you're coming to us for a zoning change or specific land use or significant projects that can change kind of the local feel, yeah, local government's going to be your person to talk to.
That's really good. So both play a factor there and
Oh,
are
yeah.
important. So it's good.
Oh, and what your follow-up question, remind me. There was a
Yeah, just
second.
the strategies yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for the reminder there. Yeah, the twofold to that was how can folks on this call, builders, adjust their strategies according to that, knowing that, both play a factor in determining those zoning rules.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest suggestions that I can provide is kind of being in touch with the local government feel and the trends and development trends that are happening within that specific area. In the city of Austin, we have what we call developer representatives. They are hired by developers that have been working in the city politics for a while, or more government, city government. And they're a big help, but because they have good relationships with council members and city staff, and they've built good rapport, but they also can understand kind of where the trends are going in Austin and how certain council members feel about certain areas in their districts.
Interesting.
Gotcha. So
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
following up on that, like in your experience, like what are there any like common mistakes you're seeing, blind spots developers might have when they're approaching you guys, especially early in that entitlements process?
Yeah, I think one of the blind spots that I have seen is kind of believing that you're able to build the same project in one area and just copy and paste and put it in another area. Each city, each area has its own unique needs, its own, community needs and community engagement levels. And so I think that's a blind spot I do see. And I think that that can be combated with the keeping in touch with kind of the local context and the local background. But that's definitely a blind spot I see. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex, that's really good. Just being proactive or not making assumptions. And you mentioned
Mhm.
just the communication and getting in touch with your local council prior. I think that's key. And so kind of to piggyback off that as well, like, what is, or, the most effective way, like so we got a lot of land acquisition entitlements folks that are on this call. What is, the most effective way that they or, their teams can build trust as they go those different areas and develop those relationships with those councils before maybe submitting a plan.
Yeah, I think that's also a good question when it comes to building trust and what can you do to build trust? I think a lot of it is coming in with good intentions, wanting to build a good project, wanting to be a part of the city. Because, like I said, ultimately, land use has a large timeline on its impact, and wanting to be a part of the city and wanting to build a good project is always going to take you a lot farther when talking to city staff and talking to council. So I think that's a big thing. Yeah, and I think being honest about the obstacles, your goals, things like that, that's always going to take you a lot farther when talking to city staff, and as well with having a good reputation in Austin.
Mhm.
Yeah, very important stuff. That reputation. I've heard a lot of people talk about how a land acquisition person, partially they have to do some political networking
Oh, yeah.
sometimes, or they have to learn a lot about what is the city envisioning, staying up to date. I'm sure you guys have like coffee chats or whatever kind of similar things to stay connected and such. But I'm curious more about like kind of a concrete example. Is there any examples you have of a project that did go smoothly because and better than expected because a developer engaged early and maybe more strategically with the city?
Yeah. So I think we all know with building and development and land use, these projects can take quite a while, specifically to go through site plan, to also be able to understand what you can build.
Mhm.
Even starting at the very beginning with land acquisition can take a minute as well. So having been in this position for only about 2.5 years, there's only been, a few projects that I've seen kind of the tail end of. But I think one of the projects that is happening here in Austin that I've really enjoyed so far, the process, is kind of like the engagement that had started at the very beginning, knowing that they are in a prominent area with a lot of involved neighborhood associations, also, who has a reputation here in Austin for doing great things. Them coming to us and giving us like, this is what we intend to build and this is what we'd like to do. Because, when you do that early in the process, specifically if it's like a significant project or a large project, we get to understand what you're trying to do, and therefore we can support that. Right? We can say, this looks good to us, and we're happy to help you through the process, or we're happy to garner support if need be. And so I think that's really important in that aspect. And you know what? They've done really well at continuing to engage us through the process, working with our development services, working with different departments on their utilities and their needs. And I think it really started off good because they did that initial engagement, and they were able to understand the mayor's. They had met with the mayor's office, and that of course assists as well in working through Austin Energy and Austin Water and those utilities that we all know can get a little tricky.
A lot of
Yeah,
project management there, right?
Yeah.
it is a team effort, and I
Yes.
just love the what you talk about as far as like the building the trust, the coming early communication, the teamwork, and really the contribution to the city, like being a part of the city. I think that is a really unique approach that heart's in the right place, and I think that could go a long way. Really good stuff there. I guess this is the next. We have a handful of questions here that a little bit of time I should say. What trends are you seeing in land use policy? Maybe whether it's like density changes or environmental overlays or affordable housing mandates, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
What trends do you think will most affect development approvals
Yeah.
as we look ahead over the next handful of years?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with one of the biggest ones that we're definitely seeing, and that we're feeling. And this is, I think, is probably going to be positive for development. I think in general, speaking specifically to the state of Texas, as Texas legislature is looking to cap our property tax increases. We were at 8%, we're now at 3.5%, and it's likely that we will be capped even further. But what that means is that cities and areas in Texas are looking to grow their tax base. So that is going to be something that in the coming years is going to impact development. It's going to impact the way cities are seeing development, because there needs to be more tax base, and especially for those smaller communities, et cetera. I also think in terms of, structure building, and densification, environmental issues will continue to be a big part of the conversation and development and the trends. And specifically, more so towards, like, for example, water. I mean, we know that a lot of cities are struggling with water. And so I think being able to know, what is the utility impact on the area? Where is your water source? Are you building in an environmentally sensitive area? Et cetera, et cetera. Those kind of conversations around an environment, as well as, I think a lot of the conversations about density has been also has an environmental lens to it as well, because the heat island effect is real. The amount of concrete that we have is real. We're already seeing a lot of those, traditional strip mall-esque, lot of concrete areas are prime for redevelopment because of that, because there's a lot of concrete on that. And so impervious cover conversations will always be there. Water and drainage will always be there. So I think those are probably about two areas that I can absolutely say that we're going to continue to have conversations about that. And that'll definitely impact the way the city views its development and what kinds of projects we're developing.
Very,
That's really
yeah.
good.
Yeah, very interesting. I am curious, when you think about like environmental impacts, do you work with other like neighboring municipalities to kind of make any decisions, or is it a little more siloed than that?
No, it's definitely a regional effort, because something like water will always be a regional conversation.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of it, specifically for Austin, those who want to build in the ETJ, which is, the area just right outside of Austin, those are where a lot of the water conversations come in, because it's, both county and both Austin Water, we're both having conversations on those lens. And the way water works is, if you're getting water from a certain area, it impacts the rest. So it's absolutely a regional conversation. And I always think those ETJ projects are really interesting. People think that they're a little less complicated because you don't have to deal with the Austin regulations, but sometimes they can sneak up on you on what you end up having to talk about.
Yeah, and then
Interesting.
Alexis, oh,
Mhm.
sorry, Mary, just a kind
No,
of
go for
follow-up
it.
question there, because we have folks that are across state lines, and I'm sure we'll kind of dive into that a little bit more as well. But just of the trends that you just mentioned, are you seeing that specific to the Austin area, or I know you mentioned water will always be a thing. I'm sure that environmental concerns as well. But across the country, are you seeing like any trends for our teams that are maybe building or developing regionally or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think densification is going to be one of those things that some cities are really talking about, specifically those who are up and coming and have had growth challenges. Boston and New York City and all those Philly, the old cities, they have that densification from the beginning.
Mhm.
Versus, now a lot of these cities like Austin are trying to retrofit some of that density, as well as retrofitting public transportation, et cetera. So I think when building across state lines or in different places. I think kind of going back to one of the previous answers was understanding the context of where you're at, right?
Mhm.
And what are the needs in that area? What is a community asking for? Can you provide a park? Can you provide a pool? Like those are kind of the conversations when building across state lines that you will have much easier if you have a kind of a thumb on what's happening at city council and where are the decisions going. But yeah, so I think nationally, environment, of course, as well. There are a lot of different areas that are struggling with water and utilities, et cetera. And then, of course, I have to tell you there are different kinds of building regulations in the South versus the North. I mean, in the city of Austin, we just mandated air conditioning in all of our buildings. That wasn't mandated before, and so we have now temperature requirements. But that's something that you'll only have to deal with in the South, in terms of heat. Right, your problems are flipped when you're up north, and so yeah, just understanding the context of where you're at.
That's actually really fascinating. I didn't know that. I always see in the north, it's like, oh, heating required, heating required. But now here in the south, and I'm in Florida nowadays, it gets hot, and needing that temperature control is going to be more and more important. So,
Yeah.
I know we should start to kind of like wrap up on this section. I want to flip back to Austin a little bit more, just a few last questions on this, but. Are there any other aspects of the specific to Austin zoning and land use policy that most often influence whether the projects can move smoothly through the approvals or face any delays?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the kind of project, right? Because here in Austin, because there's such growth and there's such desire, we're talking about projects full of single family development. We're also talking about 600, 700-foot sky rises. And it's actually very exciting to be in a city where we get to talk about both of those. And we have such a variety in our housing. But I think ultimately, things that get projects through the process and that don't stick too much is just having a full understanding of kind of what your lot looks like, what your utilities are needed, kind of understanding yeah, I think the utility demands are one of the biggest obstacles that we see. And I think a willingness to work with Austin Energy and Austin Water on those areas, as well as, kind of understanding if you're doing like a big single family development, obviously you work with our transportation department, understanding traffic concerns, et cetera. So I think like a mentality of like I'm ready to work with the city and fix the obstacles that we got to fix, I think is important, and I think will get you through the process more smoothly. But I think overall, just having a good understanding of your land, like really, I think at the end of the day, that's what it is.
That's good. And I kind of just made a note on my previous question there, as we expand beyond the Austin area, and we have a handful of questions that are coming in here that we'll get to. But for those that are expanding beyond state lines when zoning regulations are they're just very vastly different. You touched on some of the trends. Is there anything that you would add to that? Where folks can stay more proactive. I imagine it's probably going to be around just the communication, knowing your land, that sort of thing. But is there anything else that you would maybe share for the folks that are building across the country or just regionally?
Yeah, I think there's the running theme that I'm realizing through these questions is again understanding the context, because each city will have different projects that they're working on. Which, for example, the city of Austin is building a rail line throughout the city. We call it Project Connect, and that is vastly going to impact the development of those pieces of land along the rail line. We're going to want to see denser and taller, and maybe, not single family, or maybe single family but dense. The conversations are going to be about what transportation benefits you can provide, et cetera. And just I think that'll also impact land acquisition, of course. Like what is happening next to your piece of land and how is that going to impact? And I think that's important to know. But there are cities doing major transportation projects. There, I-35 even here, we're expanding I-35. But I think understanding vision plans, a lot of cities have, future plans for their city, for their infrastructure, et cetera. Yeah. So it's important to acknowledge like where you're plugging in, I guess.
Definitely, definitely.
Smoothing.
Yeah. And so I guess how can you talk a bit about how land teams can be prepared, but how can they make sure they have the data and visuals they need to communicate clearly with council and other decision makers?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's like yeah, I think it's a harder question for me because when it comes to the data and visuals, like I depend on y'all, right? Like when y'all come into my office, I'm hoping to see something that I can read or give to the mayor, things like that. I love renderings. I think they're awesome. But I also recognize renderings do come later in the process most of the time. So I think it is important to be able to have your data ready to go when talking to council members or city staff. How many units are you building? How big are these units? Kind of just the basics. And I think, of course, working with city staff, I mean, each department is experts in their area, and they are going to tell you kind of what they need and also so what's in your area and any obstacles you may face. So I truly depend on y'all for the data and the visuals.
And hopefully TraceAir can help with that.
Yes.
Any other questions,
Now,
Cody?
well, no, that I think you addressed it there, Alexis. My question would have been, how important or is having something coming to you? Is it ideal? Is it a must-have? Is it just or a nice to have? When coming to you with a rendering or some visuals or some plans before having that conversation.
Hmm.
But you addressed that, so thank you.
Yeah.
But no, I'm good on my end.
Yeah, well, I guess just to wrap up, and everyone on the webinar, just put your questions in that question and answer box. We'll do a quick, TraceAir overview and then get to those questions. So you will have a few minutes to, get them in before we get to that section. But then last question for you, Alexis, if you could give one piece of advice to our land acquisition leaders trying to, future-proof their pipeline against policy risk, what would that be?
Yeah, I was kind of mulling over what that could be. Um, I think it's always hard, right? We know that development is always in flux. Interest rates are always in flux, it seems like these days. And so I think, starting off with having that good relationship, knowing that you're coming into a city that has its own character, its own vibe, its own policymakers. And kind of acknowledging that you want to be a part of the community, I think is a great angle when talking about your developments. And that specifically with City Hall will get you further. Now, on the building code stuff, I'm gonna leave that up to the engineers and our city staff.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for talking with us. Like I said, we're just going to go into a quick overview of, maybe what TraceAir could help in those city council discussions. We've been working a lot on land acquisition tools and, kind of understanding the land acquisition area. We know that every land deal, it starts with a lot of questions about what you can build, how fast can you move, will the city approve it? And, we're trying to, help you answer a lot of those questions up front. So you may know of our land development tools with, drones and, doing land development, project management, site intelligence, etc. But our vision is really to be this one-stop shop, simplify the day-to-day of all of our clients, everywhere from land acquisition to land development to even the vertical stage as well. So since like I mentioned, we already do a lot of those drones for land development, we kind of worked our way backwards, getting involved with a lot of the land acquisition due diligence departments. We do LiDAR scans nationwide. We've done some surveying. We're licensed surveyors in 4 states: California, Nevada, Florida, North Carolina. Texas is on our roadmap. It's coming soon, along with other states like South Carolina. But, we've also been working on getting a lot more data into your hands, which Cody will show you in our layout generator, some of the elements of land data, layouts, and, some quantity takeoffs. So with that, I will hand it to Cody.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. I'll share my screen. I should see that pop up okay in just a moment here. Let me know when you see that okay. Did that pop up?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, perfect. Well, for the sake of time or lack thereof here, I went ahead and spent a few minutes on the front end of our conversation today and put together a layout with a few different lot types, with some restricted areas, some open spaces, things like that. So I'll kind of touch on this a little bit today. But just this tool has been rolled out for a couple months now, and our product team has just been absolutely phenomenal with as teams like Mary and conversations like with that myself and my colleagues have been having with you, clients that we work with, or folks that we don't, and then we're hearing from teams and taking feedback and saying, hey, we need this, and our product team has really got to work. So we've done a previous demo or a webinar on this, or maybe you have seen it previously. I'm going to highlight a couple of the new functionality, new tools, as well as some that really are pertinent to our conversation and topic today. So as you can see, this is our layout tool. Mary mentioned we really want to equip our teams early on with as much information as possible. So we're not creating policy, we're not changing policy, but we can take that information along with giving you some additional data to use to make really just more confident, quicker, and decisions for throughout acquisition and then into development and so on. So with that, you can see I do have a couple different views or site constraints turned on right now. I have my wetlands view, I have my flood map turned on. That helped me create my restricted areas. A couple things that I do want to highlight. Number one, this contours site constraint. A little difficult to see because I already have my layout already drawn. So I will move this around a little bit on the screen so you can see this contours view. This was asked for and our product team delivered. I'll turn that off here. The other thing that I do want to highlight is this request for more data button. This is almost like kind of in-app requests or in-app purchases, so to speak. But for those respective states that Mary talked about, being able to in layout generator request an alta, request a topo, add maybe utilities map or request your zoning regulation. And coming very, very soon, I'm going to put a couple plugs in here to this conversation, but we are going to have the ability to have a professional validation of your conceptual site layout, as well as like a thorough zoning analysis and compliance check. We have a licensed civil engineer on staff and as well as a land planner. So being able to run those against that will be pretty cool. So that's coming down the pipe. Few other things that I will note with the layout that I've drawn here. I've inputted my zoning rules already. So I was able to look at my constraints. I mapped out my restricted areas and then plugged in my lot information. I drew my lot or drew my roads and then the tool itself attached the specific lot type to those roads to create that layout. And then I went ahead and added a couple different lot types. It is very easy to do. We support up to 5. So if you're maybe evaluating a parcel, looking at the different product offerings that you have, seeing, okay, what product can we fit, the density calculation, or, we have some folks that come to us and, I've had several conversations. Well, they'll purchase a parcel and they'll go to somebody like an Alexis and say, hey, we would like to, apply for some rezoning and see if they can capture a few more units. And so this really does help with existing zoning, taking existing zoning information or, potentially, maybe changes that they're looking to apply for. So very easily, you select your lot type, it gives you a corresponding color, and you go ahead and draw that polygon there after inputting your lot width, and then hit generate layout, and boom, you got your different lot type with the measurements that you gave. And again, we support up to 5. It is really, really neat to be able to quickly create something on the fly. For myself, this took me maybe 5 minutes or so to put this layout together. It is super simple to adjust or delete or add roads by moving these little dots, deleting roads, adding them back. Again, editing the layout. I can do the same thing for my restricted areas. I can do the same thing for my lot types. So again, experimenting with the different layouts based on the zoning rules that you're experiencing. 2 more things that I will highlight here. As you see off to the right, all of your site information is here. And what I really want to hone in on is the different restricted areas and the open spaces. A lot of folks that I talk to in acquisition, as they're looking at different parcels, they'll say, well, Cody, we got to have 20% open space, or we got to have 15% environmental or maybe tree conservation, whatever that looks like. But we need to be able to create a layout and have that acreage in there and know that we're going to be checking those boxes and be compliant with those ordinance. So with that, you're able to see the acreage and the percentage against the overall track with those specific areas. And so I found that, at least the feedback that I've got, that we've got as a team, has been really, really useful. So one other thing that I will highlight, and then I'll pass it back to Mary here, is our grading quantities. Due to time, I don't have enough time to go into it. But as I select grading quantities, what that does is again, on the note of equipping you early on with as much data as possible, we give some very preliminary cut fill numbers, some very preliminary elevation points, so that moving this parcel along in the acquisition phase as you get to due diligence and eventually close out and into development. Hey, what's this project on the development going to be like? How much? What is it going to be? An import, export? What do we have here, right? So just again, equipping you early on, or as early as possible, to make decisions confidently on parcels that you're looking at purchasing or investing into before you invest in those resources. So last thing, and I'm going to plug it. I mentioned our product team is just absolutely incredible, and they got to work. So one of the cool new tools coming out with our layout generator coming very, very soon is our townhomes functionality. And so very similar to how I plotted my little polygon around the specific lot type, generated the layout. It'll work very similar to that, where you plug in your townhome lot types or unit widths and depths, and then the spacing in between, the amount of townhomes per building, and then boom, we generate your layouts and within the lot, or within the parcel. So very, very cool. It's coming soon. And again, our product team has just gotten to work hearing from you. And that's really what drives our innovation here. So with that, I'll pass it back to Mary. And she's got an exciting announcement here as well that couples, TraceAir, but then our conversation today around zoning and policy. So thank you, Mary. I'll stop sharing and appreciate y'all.
Yeah, so thanks for showing the layout generator, Cody. One thing we would like to highlight that's on the horizon is our land search tool. So this is kind of even a precursor for a layout generator. You'd be able to search for different land parcels, find their ownership informations, save the different parcels, be like, okay, well, I kind of like this one. I want to explore it on layout generator just to see if it pencils out high level. Oh, I want to see the zoning, the school zones, elevation, site constraints. And we're in some areas, where we're able to get that future land use, that'll be included as well. I know future land use is super important, as Alexis said, understanding what the city's vision is, working with the city to kind of, realize that vision as well. So similar to what we've been talking about, our goal is really that one-stop shop and to be, TraceAir is, helping you all the time, every day, and everything's very streamlined. So with that, we do have a few questions. There's still time to, ask your questions and such, but we'll start out. It does look like, someone was asking a little bit about the layout generator and what cities do think about the layout generator. I guess Alexis, do you have any thoughts based on what you just saw?
Well, I mean, it looks like a very cool product. But I think it's in terms of what we're going to think of the layout generator. I think if you give it to my office, I think it's a fantastic tool to see what you could do on that property. But I am ultimately going to defer to our city staff, our planning staff, our development services, and they're going to give me kind of the final, yes, this goes with our city code. Yes, this adheres to X requirements. And those are the people that I'm going to get a sign off from. So I think it's a really cool tool, and it's definitely a cool visual for us at least. So
Yeah, and I
Great.
will say, I do want to make a note. My dad, who is a civil engineer in Austin, he also said, as an engineer, it's really great to understand what his clients would be thinking about, and it helps give him the visual to, of course, he's going to change it, he's going to make it more engineering, but it's a great kind of, starting point to help him and other engineers as well.
It's awesome. Okay, a couple more here while we're got a couple minutes left. This is the age-old question here. When will this be available, the land search tool? So I got a question come in here about like it, but when can we take a peek?
I can also take that one. So, right now, the land search tool is in beta testing. So, actually, we do encourage you on the post webinar survey. If you're interested in it, you want to be a beta tester, or maybe just get on the wait list, fill that out and we can contact you. We don't have a date for when it's going to be released, but hopefully soon. And if you want to get your hands on it now, again, fill out that form. And then Cody, I can take that last question. It looks like someone asked a little bit about Austin Water. So this is a long one, but I'll read it out. Austin Water's historically been unsupported of development agreements that involve reimbursement of public improvement for wastewater extension costs through impact fees collected from downstream developments. Reasoning stated has been a lack of resources to manage tracking and executing those reimbursements. Alexis, do you see that changing at any point in the near future?
yeah, I think capacity issues are always something that our departments are going to struggle with in terms of, kind of development. It's interesting to hear that question and from that perspective. But I think that's something that's good for me to know when having continued conversations with Austin Water about potential developments. But yeah, capacity is a real issue, specifically when cities are struggling with making their budgets and ensuring that we have the resources to even pay for additional staff. Yeah,
Gotcha. And
way
we
to
are
work on it.
it's lots of politics out there. And we are running out of time. So, any other questions we'll be answering, individually. But we do want to thank you for joining. Thank you so much, Alexis, for talking with us today. If you have any more questions, just email us at info@traceair.net or fill out that post-webinar survey. Any final thoughts, Alexis, before we jump off?
I just thank you for having me. This was really fun, and I love a chance to talk about land use and development and its relationship with City Hall because it's there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Alexis, Mary. Appreciate the co-host and yeah, appreciate everybody jumping on today. So you have a great rest of Friday, great weekend. Hope you have some great plans. And we'll talk to y'all soon.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.